So we'll get started with our first deck of the course, inshallah. So peace be upon you all again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're going to talk about the big picture. Okay, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you're an alien, this guy right here, friendly looking fellow, and you're from outer space, obviously. You visit a brand new planet called Earth that you have never visited before. You don't know anything about this planet. It's your first time coming here. And you start to explore this new planet called planet Earth. Being from another planet, you're walking around and you look down at your feet, there's a strange object on the ground in front of you, and you pick it up and it looks like this. Now, you and I know this is a wristwatch, but you being an alien, you've never seen this kind of artifact before, and you don't know what it is. You're curious to what it might be. So you take this artifact back to your spaceship and you start to look at it and try to decipher the symbols on it. And as you start to analyze it, you can see how intricate it is. You see many components that are all designed to fit together and mesh together in such a precise and perfect way. So as you start to disassemble the watch, you see all of the hundreds of pieces that make up the components, and you see that they're all placed in a perfect way so that they fit together and mesh together. Now, would you, as a rational, intelligent being, would you ever conclude that the components of this wristwatch ever happen to come together randomly to fit to form this contraption? Is there anyone who might think that all of these intricate components here would come together randomly to form whatever device this is? No. So I see people shaking their heads. I see Bill shaking his head too. So no one in their right mind, no rational, logical, thinking being would think that all of these components just happen to fall together in such a perfect and precise way to make this device. And likewise, nobody would assume that the wristwatch had no designer or engineer to plan how these components fit together. So naturally, if we can't assume that these components came together randomly, that leaves only one option, that somebody must have designed these components and somebody must have put these components together. So let's leave that example of the wristwatch for now and we'll come back to it. What about the solar system that we live in though? Each planet in the solar system and every moon moves along in a fixed orbit. No planets or moons are colliding with each other or with the sun. Their orbits are completely fixed in time and not ever changing, either 1 second slower or 1 second quicker. They are precise down to the millisecond. In fact, the Earth completes one rotation around the sun every 365.242199 years. And there's more decimal places if I had room on the slide to fit it. And this is, by the way, this is why we have a leap year every 4th year. So it's 365.25 days, and every 4 years we have to make up for those 4 quarters and have an extra day on the end of February. So think about that precision. The same word that we use to describe the components of the wristwatch is the same words that we are describing the motion of the planets and the moons in our solar system. But if we zoom in from the solar system and we just look at the planet Earth, the Earth has several mechanisms to protect life on Earth from harmful radiation that exists in space. One of those protection mechanisms is called the Van Allen belts. This is going back to your late primary school, early high school science class. A radiation belt is a layer of energetic charged particles, and it's held in place around the Earth by a magnetic field. By the Earth's magnetic field, the Van Allen belt is held in place. The Earth has 2 of these belts, and sometimes others may be temporarily created. We also have the ozone layer, which shields the Earth from ultraviolet radiation that causes skin cancer. And everyone in Australia knows all about the ozone layer and sunscreen because we have a big hole above Australia in our ozone layer. And so we all are taught from a very young age to put on sunscreen and wear a hat. So it's amazing that there was a natural mechanism in the ozone layer to protect us from these ultraviolet radiation. It's amazing that there are 2 shields around planet Earth in the form of the Van Allen belts, which shield us from cosmic radiation floating around in outer space. So let's look at some various examples of life on Earth, so coming in even smaller. And we could spend a lifetime studying all the different life forms, plants, flora, and fauna on Earth. You guys have David Attenborough for that, so I'm not going to go through every single creature or anything, but I just want to mention a couple of examples to you. one example that I want to talk about is the honeycomb of the bee. And by the way, there is a chapter in the Quran called Surat al-Nahl, which means the chapter of the bees. So this is something that Allah has drawn our attention to. There's also another one called the chapter of the spider. The honeycomb of the bee is built in a hexagonal shape because it's the most efficient use of building materials to get the strongest structure and store the most honey while using the smallest amount of building materials. Now, I actually saw a wildlife documentary about bees. There were some scientists who went crazy trying to figure out, why do the bees make the honeycomb in the shape of a hexagon? Why isn't it a triangle? Why isn't it a square? Why isn't it a circle? And they did all kinds of research and computer modeling for over a decade, and eventually they realized that the hexagonal shape has the most strength, the most storage, while using the least amount of building material. That means you could build more honeycomb with the same amount of building material if it was a hexagon than you could if it was a circle. And you can kind of see that down here in the bottom left, where it is a circle, you've actually got a lot of wasted building material in the gaps between those cells. But where it's a hexagon, there's hardly any gap, there's hardly any wasted space and wasted building materials. Now, you have to ask yourself, just the same way that we thought about that wristwatch and all its components in a detailed way, you have to ask yourself, if it took a human being with their intelligent, scientific mind and lots of scientific tools and computer modeling at their disposal, took them over 10 years to realize that the honeycomb works best as a hexagon, how do the bees know that the hexagon is the best shape? Did they have a team of bees researching different honeycomb shapes? Did they have scientist bees build different honeycombs out of different shapes and realize which one is best and show statistical data and charts and all of that stuff? How do they know? How do they know that the hexagon is the best? How come you haven't got bees in South America making one shape and bees in North America making a different shape? They're all hexagons. So these are some of the things that we have to think about in just the same way that we thought about that wristwatch example. Imagine a plane. I'm sure you've all been on a plane or even seen a plane at some point in your life. When you design and manufacture a plane, there are hundreds or thousands of design decisions that have to be made along the way. How big is the plane going to be might dictate how many engines it needs, or how wide the wingspan needs to be, how much fuel it needs to be able to fly a certain distance without running out of fuel. So all of these design decisions have to fit together. You couldn't have a massive plane with a tiny little fuel tank. You couldn't have a massive plane with no wings. All of these decisions are interconnected. You have a certain size plane that can carry a certain payload, that needs wings that generate a certain amount of lift, and it needs to carry a certain amount of fuel to be able to carry its passengers and cargo a distance of X amount of kilometers or miles. All of those decisions are interconnected to each other. And the engineers that design and manufacture these planes, all these components and all this science has to talk to each other in order to make a plane that ultimately functions and works. Not too much of a stretch of the imagination. What about the same design decisions when it comes to a bird? Who decided that this bird here would have this wingspan? Who decided that the beak would be this long instead of this long? Who decided what kind of feet or legs or how tall or how small or how big the bird would be? Birds, by the way, have been designed with a lot of bones that are hollow to reduce the weight. So the bird doesn't need a lot of power in its wings to lift all of that heavy weight. And of course, you have different kinds of birds with different kinds of wings designed to catch different kinds of prey. The wings of an owl are very small and wide, and they flap slowly to still generate lift, but they don't make any noise. Whereas the wings of an eagle are designed in a completely different way. So, again, just the same kind of design decision. It didn't take you much imagination to think about the design decisions of a plane. Everyone was nodding in the room and it made a lot of sense. But what about those same design decisions when it comes to natural living things? And again, all those components have to speak to each other in order for the thing to actually function. Imagine a submarine. Again, the way it's constructed, the kind of materials that are used, make sure that it doesn't implode under the massive pressure underneath the ocean. And this submarine has an engine that can make it move at a certain amount of speed, and it can go up at a certain rate and down at a certain rate, and so many people can live inside it, and so on. Again, all these design decisions have to be made for the thing to function and work together in a cohesive way. What about the fish and the mammals that live underneath the sea? Their bodies are made up of different components that all have to work together in order for the thing to actually function. So, can we see that just as we designed and created the watch, the plane, the submarine, someone somewhere must have created the solar system that we talked about with perfect orbits, the bird, the fish, and obviously our own body, soul, mind, and intellect. We have one heart but two lungs. That's a design decision. We have one mouth but two eyes. That's a design decision. Two arms and two legs. That's a design decision. All of these design decisions had to be made in harmony with each other so that you can function, so that you can be a living, breathing, walking, thinking human being. So creation by necessity establishes proof that there is a creator. We all said at the beginning of tonight that when you see that wristwatch, and especially when you look at the intricate components and how they fit together, we must conclude that there was a designer. We must conclude that these components were created to fit together by someone somewhere. Even though when the alien found that wristwatch, they didn't see the engineer or the designer. They didn't see the manufacturer. They only saw the watch. But seeing the watch is evidence that there was a designer. Someone asked Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, how do we know that there is a God even though we cannot see him? And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, saw some camel dung in front of them. They lived in a desert, so there was camel dung around the place. So he was answering this man and he said, camel dung is evidence that a camel passed through here. The camel's gone. You can't see the camel. Can't hear the camel, you can't smell the camel. There's no sign of a camel. But seeing the camel dung there proves that a camel must have walked this way. So even though you cannot see the Creator, you cannot see God, you cannot see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, looking at the various things He has left behind, the perfection in His creation is the proof that He exists. If I drew something here on this whiteboard, if I wrote my name, I wrote Ahmad on here on the whiteboard, and I left. Someone is going to come into this classroom tomorrow and they're going to see someone was here and they wrote the name Ahmad on the whiteboard, even though they can't see me, but they will see the trace that I have left for them. Now, if there is a creator who wants us to know that he exists, he will leave traces that we with our intellect can identify. If I wanted to write a message for Brother Alif, I would leave a message in a handwriting that he can understand, in a language that he can read, and I would leave. God has left signs in a way that we can decipher and understand that He exists. And He draws our attention to these things in His holy books. And we'll get to those holy books as well, inshallah. Now, this creator, is it one? Or is it many, like in the example of the submarine or the airplane? Is there one who created life, and another one who created planets, and another one who created plants, and another one who created day and night? In nature, in systems, in organizations, things work in a particular way. We have one brain. A team has one captain. A corporation has one CEO. A country has one prime minister or president. We just got a new one, didn't we? The moment that the moment that the top of that tree becomes a partnership or a committee, there's an opportunity for division. There's an opportunity for one person to have an opinion and someone else to have a different opinion. There will be a chance that one boss gives one order and the other boss gives an opposite order. And if you've ever worked for Arabs, you know this is always the case. So there becomes a clash. As long as you have one decision maker, one brain, one head, one captain, one CEO, there can never be any conflict in the order that is created. Not only that, if there is more than one creator, there will be more than one right and wrong, which could be conflicting. No two minds could agree on every detail of creation that currently exists. Even when we have teams of designers working on a plane or a submarine, they usually have to go by consensus. Therefore, God must be one. But let's talk about morality for a second, because we mentioned right here, talking about what is right and what is wrong. Another word for what is right and what is wrong is morality. Let's talk about morality for a second. Let's talk about who decides what is right and what is wrong. So if I surveyed 100 people, 100 random people walking down the street, and I asked them about their moral stance on a number of issues. If I said, tell me how you feel about capital punishment, the death penalty. Tell me how you feel about abortions. Lots of protests happening right now in the United States about abortion. How do you feel about homosexuality? And so on. If I got all these contentious issues and I asked 100 random people what their opinion was, how many different sets of answers do you think I would get? What do you think? Would everyone agree? No, definitely not. There's two on each?
At least two opinions.
So you'll have two different opinions, two different opinions, two different opinions. You might have 3 opinions on abortion. Someone would say no, but in the case of rape, it's okay, for example. And so if we asked 100 people 100 different questions, we have 100 times 100 different answers, or even probably more than that. You'd have thousands of different combinations. 2 people who agree on capital punishment might not agree on abortion. The ones who agree on abortion might not agree on homosexuality, and so on. So you would have probably 100 different unique sets of answers. Or we can say safely over 50 different sets of answers. But wait a minute, we're talking about issues of morality here. How can there be 50 or 100 or 1,000 different combinations to what is right and what is wrong? So probably 100 different answers. But there's another complication. Human beings change their minds about morality. Slavery was okay. You rewind time 1,000 years, slavery was fine. No issue. Homosexuality 1,000 years ago was not fine. But now, by and large, it's fine. In Australia, we just passed laws, I think last year, to say that homosexual people can get married. This makes it even more confusing. Now that you add the time variable into the equation, something that is okay today might not be okay tomorrow, and vice versa. So now it's getting very confusing. However, the things that are morally right will always be morally right, and the things that are morally wrong will always be morally wrong, regardless of popular opinion, regardless of what the human race thinks is right today or wrong tomorrow. The thing that is morally right will always be morally right. The thing that is morally wrong will always be morally wrong. But we have a problem now. We have so many different opinions and views about what is morally right and wrong, but we're saying that that's what's morally right and wrong can't change. So, based on that, we definitely need a superior system that governs what is right and what is wrong based on the essence of what is actually right and wrong, and not based on the popular opinion of the human beings that are alive at the time. There might be human beings alive in another 10,000 years from now who go back to slavery. They say slavery is fine again. We were wrong to think that all human beings are equal. Now definitely there should be a superior class and a slave class. So, who has the right then to say what is right and wrong? We're saying there should be only one set of right and wrong and it shouldn't change. But we're saying all the human beings can't agree on what is right and wrong. Doesn't it make sense then that the one who created the universe, the solar system, the birds, the fish, the mammals, the human beings, whoever did that designing and that creating that we talked about before, that's the one who should be able to decide what is right and wrong. An intelligence, an intellect, a mind that can design the bird and the whale and the bees and the honeycomb and the solar system and the earth and the planets and the moons and the human being, that's the one who, when they say that something is right, I'm going to listen. And when they say that something is wrong, I'm going to listen. This gift of knowledge or understanding what is really right and wrong would constitute a complete system of life. Say you had all the answers to all the things that were right and all the things that were wrong in your hands. That would be a pretty good resource. Surely, if he had wanted to tell us right and wrong, he would be thorough. And he would not leave out anything important so that we are left guessing or arguing about. He's not going to talk to us about abortion but not mention capital punishment. He's not going to talk about capital punishment but not mention slavery. If that supreme intelligence wanted to give us a moral code, he would be thorough, because we can see the evidence of the perfection of his creation in all the other things. But why would he tell us? Why would this creator decide to give us a moral code? When you were young, did your parents ever tell you things? Did they sometimes tell you, don't eat rocks, don't put bugs in your mouth, or eat your vegetables, or don't jump on the bed? Sure they did, right? Right? Did they tell you to look both ways before you cross the street? Now, why would they tell you those things? All of these things can either benefit or harm you, not benefit or harm your parents. So why would they tell you? What's their concern? What's their motivation for telling you eat your vegetables? Don't jump on the bed. What do you think?
Keep you safe.
To keep you safe. Why do they want to keep you safe?
Keep you alive.
Yeah, why do they want to keep you alive?
They love us.
There you go. Thank you so much. Because they love you. They want to keep you safe, healthy, alive, injury-free. Have all your protein and all your vitamins from your spinach because they love you. That's the core of what we're looking for. Because it's what's best for you, because it's for your own good, it's to protect your life and your well-being. They care about you because they love you. So, God or Allah cares about his creation. The whole purpose of teaching us anything through prophets or messengers or scripture is that reason, because he cares about us. This is why he has sent messengers, scriptures, telling us what is morally right and what is morally wrong, how to live, all for our own benefit. All the solutions, all the answers, we have it all. For the moment, let's call this set of rules or set of guidelines, let's call it the ultimate cheat sheet to life, the perfect system of life for ultimate happiness in this world and even after that until forever. That's quite a mouthful, that name. The perfect system of life for ultimate happiness in this world and even after that until forever. A clever person who believes in the credibility of the author. So if you really genuinely believe that there is a creator, that there is a God, might say, hey, this book is amazing. I'm going to do whatever this thing says. I completely submit to the instructions in this book. Completely submit to the instructions in this book. We can call this guy the submitter. It's not a very catchy name, I'll give you that. The submitter. The Arabic word for the one who submits is a Muslim. This is what the word Muslim means. The one who submits. Submits to who? Submits to the Almighty. Whoever they are, whatever country, skin color, ethnicity, language they speak, if they decide to submit to the moral code of Almighty God, they are a submitter and they are a Muslim. Any questions? I always ask for 4 things. Questions, comments, thoughts, or feelings. Questions, comments, thoughts, or feelings. Any of those? Thanks everyone. Assalamu alaikum.